Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's January 21st, 2025, and today I want to discuss teaching our children about financial adequacy. We're going to start off by just covering what it means over time, over the lifespan of a child from 1 year old until the time of retirement at 68 years old. However, these are at our website, mindfullivingsanctuary.com. I wrote the 12 categories of things that I wish I had learned as a child and the things that I wish I had taught my children when they began as well their lives. So first, financial adequacy. Second, critical thinking and logical reasoning. And so I've already written an article on critical thinking and the logical fallacies. I've done videos on problem solving. I've done videos on adaptability, civic responsibilities. It's not just our rights, but it's also our responsibilities. Our emotional intelligence is something we need to be teaching our children about. We've got so many issues nowadays. Communication skills, practical life skills, digital media and literacy skills, health and wellness, interpersonal and social skills, environmental awareness, relationship building, and self-discovery and purpose. So those are all topics that I have been writing about and that I will continue to write about in the future on our website, which is mindfullivingsanctuary.com. So today, what I want to do is talk about the importance of understanding compounding interest and beginning your investments early in life. And I will be covering other important topics, such as having a spending bucket by the time you reach retirement age, by the time you enter into retirement. It isn't just an emergency fund, but when we're young, things happen, things break down, there's tremendous losses at times, financial burdens that can come up. And so we all know about emergency funds, but how to build an emergency fund, how to grow your emergency fund as the expenses and things that you experience and get in your life, how to build that emergency fund to the point where you've got a 5 to 7 year period of having an adequate spending bucket so that you don't have to touch your retirement account when you're retired. So that would be the goal anyways. So let's discuss for a minute about the S&P 500. Now, I'm not invested in the S&P 500, but it is a relatively safe place to put your money over time, over the long run, if you're not comfortable with other investment categories and funds. And certainly you can get away from having to pay financial advisors to manage your money, which can add up to quite an expense over time. But what we're going to look at right now, by looking at about a 97-year period since its inception in 1926 through 2023, the S&P 500 returns. Now, on average, so an average takes the total amount over those 97 years, adds up the percentage, and divides that by the total number of data points, 97 here. So on average, the S&P 500 gives a 12.3% return on your investment annually. So every year, on average, you'd get about a 12.3% return on your investment. However, the average inflation rate, and it jumps up and down as you'll see in this video, is 2.92%. So if we do an inflation adjusted return on your investment from the S&P 500 on average over the time period from its inception in 1926 through 2023, we can safely say that there's 9.39% return on investment. So we'll be using 9 in some of the calculations we're doing here in just a couple of moments. But it's really important by the time you hit your retirement age that you have a bucket that you you are taking and paying all your bills out of that will cover 5 to 7 years. So if we looked in 1929, the Great Depression began, and we got a 3-year period where we got about a 60% almost an 80% decrease in your retirement fund. So if you had $1,000 invested in 1929, you might have just over $200 left over. I haven't done the calculations, but that's about it. And you can see the inflation rate dropped, so the price of goods fell. But if you add up over here the inflation adjusted costs for things, well, it's pretty important. And the real losers during this time, and some people actually committed suicide because of this, but everything was caught up in there and they had to draw from their account. And so a lot of people just totally withdrew for fear of what was going on, and they lost a significant portion of their life savings. And many of them did not reinvest it before there was a rebound in the market. So there was a market recovery. And throughout this whole period here, we can talk about World War II, the beginning of World War II, or post-World War II adjustments, the Korean War issue back here, a recession in 1957, a recession in 1960, the Cuban Missile Crisis in 62, the Vietnam War in 69 and 70. Then we have the oil crisis in 73, 74. I was working at a gas station at that time, and that was a pretty significant issue. 77 through 79, the oil crisis, Jimmy Carter. I was working. This is when I was working I was working factory work at this point. So I was working at a gas station at this time, and you would think that the sky was falling, the conversations that we were all having and all. And then we had really high inflation rates in 81, 10.33%, and a decrease, almost a 5% decrease in the return. But that inflation adjusted meant that, we lost 15% of our investment during that period of time. And I should mention this. Let's say you have a 15% loss in the market. Well, if you have a 15% recovery, that doesn't get you back to where you were. You need to basically double that in order to get back to where you were. Yeah, it's much more than just a 15% recovery. So, these troubled times, these red periods here when everything was happening, the dot-com in 2000, the Great Recession in 2008, there was a 40% loss in the market during that time. But if you were too afraid to keep your money in, some of this recovery you missed out on. And we've had a real booming few years here for quite some time. And then the interest rate hike recently in 2022 knocked things down, but in 2023 things improved. 2024 is pretty good as well. So on average, we can look at a 9% is what I'm going to be using as an inflation-adjusted return on your investment. So let's say this year you have a newborn, a year ago you had a newborn baby, and at 1 year of age, you deposit $100 into their retirement fund that you're creating for them. And we're going to assume a 9% average return, inflation-adjusted return on their investment over the next, until they're 68 years old, next 67 years. And if we were to add $600 a year or $50 a month to that account, it would mean a total investment of just over $24,000, and the estimated future value would be $2.1 million. So you'd make $2 million on that $24,000 investment if you just continue to put $50 a month in for the rest of the child's life. And here's a graph of it as well. So we go all the way down to the point where they're 67 years old here, with a 9% average return on investment. And this, of course, the market's going to fluctuate. There's going to be variability in it, and that would yield a balance, if the money wasn't touched, of $2.1 million. But let's say we do this until the child's 18 years old. So let's go down here to line 42 where they're 18 years old, and we say that the amount in their account is $25,252 at the time that they're 18 years old. So let's go over to another one here, and we say, okay, present value at the time of 18 is $25,252, and now the kid is working at 18 years old and committed to putting $100 a month into that account, meaning $1,200 a year. Now let's say they do this until they're age 30. So if we go down here until they're age 30, here their balance is $104,961. I'm hoping all of this is showing up okay on the screen. So we're going to go at 12 years later when they're 30 years old, and our starting balance now is $104,961, and we're going to assume a 9% average return. They aren't going to touch the money, but now they're going to put $4,800 a year into their account. So that's 30 years from now. $400 a month will be nothing 30 years from now. We're just trying to make it so that this child, who's now 30 years old, is able to retire comfortably. It's at 68 years old. So here we are. Now we want to go down to at 40 years old. So let's find 40 years old here. This is line 36 here. At 40 years old, their starting investment amount will be $355,133. So their present value at 40 years old is $355,133. So now we're expecting them to put $500 in a month, which is $6,000 a year. We're still assuming 9% return in the S&P 500. Over time, 9% return, inflation adjusted return. And here we are. Now, if we don't do anything, they've got $4.6 million at the time they reach 67. But typically, when you're in your 40s and your 50s are your highest earning years. So let's go ahead and look 10 years in the future, and we'll go down to the point where they're 50 years old. Here we are here. We got $1,021,756. I'm hoping that this is showing up okay. So here we go over here to $1,021,756. They're 50 years old. They're going to retire in 18 years when they're 68 years old, and now they're putting $12,000 in a year. So $12,000 a year. So we want to go ahead and apologize. So they're putting $12,000 a year. They're putting $1,000 in a month into their account. And again, this is 50 years from now. So $1,000 a month won't be all that much at that point in time. And so what will end up happening is, although you see the total invested amount here, this is looking at as if they had been putting the $1,000 a month in since they were very young, since they were 1 year old or something like that. But right now their total invested amount is $379,000 over the years. That's what they put in, not 1.2 million, but $379,300, and they got back almost over $4,900,000 in return for that $397,300. So the point that I really wanted to make was starting early is the key thing. So even if we only started off with $100 at the age of 1, not even starting off at birth, and then we're putting $50 a month in, by the time they retire they'd get $2.1 million. So that's super powerful by starting early with your investments and by making sure that you have emergency funds, or by the time you reach retirement that you are okay, honey. Dinner's ready, so I've got to get ready to run down and eat dinner. So the point that I really want to make is having an emergency fund when you're first starting out, so you're trying never to touch this investment account. This is not trading. Trading is trying to buy low and sell high, take your profits and all, and paying your taxes on this. You want to have this all in a tax deferred account, part of it, and then part of it into a Roth and a taxed account that accrues your the profits, the growth over time without it needing to be taxed during retirement. And I made videos about that in the past as well. But this is the power of compounded interest rate and the power of starting very, very early in life. If you do the just so quickly to show, let's say you do the same amount and you start off at 30 years old, and say that's the first time I'm going to start, and we still start off with $100 when you're 30, and you're giving $50 a month. Well, now your estimated retirement at 68 years old is $172,000, as opposed to starting out at 1 year old at only $50 a month at $2,109,000. So starting early is so important. Having an emergency fund that you gradually grow into a spending bucket that you don't have to touch, so that you can weather bad storms. You've got enough money to pay for over 5 to 7 years that you don't have to dip into your retirement account. You've got a separate account it's actually in your retirement account, but it's not at risk of something like the S&P 500 or Apple or any other one. It's in a safer, more secure fund. So that's it for today's video, folks. I hope this is somewhat helpful, just showing the power of compounded interest rates. On average, the return of the S&P 500, what the inflation rate does over time as well, and all. And I think that's about it. So I really appreciate your comments, your thumbs up, and any other thoughts that you may have being left in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe and take care. Bye bye now.